History has had its fair share of conquerors, those who have conquered small neighboring tribes, and those who have built their realms over the ruins of empires destroyed by them. Those famous, and others who are barely mentioned in history books. However, very few have been likened to the best of them, such as Alexander the Great and Napoleon, simultaneously. Today, we begin telling the story of Nader Shah, perhaps the greatest ruler of Iran, the man who emerged from nowhere to make a final attempt to save the Safavid Empire from a painful demise. Our story begins with the emergence of Nader as a political leader and military figure in Iran, culminating in a campaign against the Afghan invaders at the Battle of Herat. Luckily for most of us, we don't really need to rule empires, so let's ignore some real-world troubles and surround ourselves with fewer eunuchs and more goddesses with our sponsor today, Motto Immortal. This is a new mobile card collector game where you'll assemble a team of deities from various religions and traditions to fight in quests, bosses and dungeons, combining strengths and synergies to make the most effective team. Or just the most beautiful team, as obviously with these characters being actual gods, they'll tend to possess god-tier beauty. And that's not to say the world and lore doesn't share those qualities. You'll need to embrace it all to save the world from darkness. Early on, you can employ Ares, a powerful card you can get for free once you complete your sign-up. Isis, an archer ideal for the early game PvE modes, and Freya, source of all beauty and a powerful support character. There are loads more, but did you know you can also talk to your gods? Yes, the game provides an AI-driven tarot service to divine answers to any questions straight from the mouths of your chosen deities, and they can offer you daily fortunes. So it's war and wisdom with Motto Immortal. Try it out for free right now, and if you use our link in the description or QR code on screen, you also start with a bonus pack worth $50, filled with useful resources. So dive into Motto Immortal, where myths shuffle and fates mingle. It is the turn of the 18th century. The Safavid Empire, which at its height controlled a vast territory spanning from the North Caucasus to Afghanistan, had long since fallen from its glory days. The empire, which reached its peak with a fearless conqueror like Shah Ismail I and a great administrator like Shah Abbas I, was slowly declining due to the ineffective rule of a succession of weak shahs. There were structural reasons for the poor state of the Safavid Empire, including the decline of the silk trade, the empire's main export commodity. At the same time, numerous problems arose due to the very nature of the Safavid regime. As a feudal state, the Safavid Empire depended on the cooperation of regional elites, governors, and tribal leaders for a vast array of functions, ranging from tax collection to raising armies for the state. This may sound contradictory, but such a decentralized system could only operate properly if the central authority was powerful and respected. In the absence of a powerful and functioning central authority, provincial elites were more reluctant to follow the rules of the state, tended to misappropriate collected taxes, and engaged in infighting with their neighboring rivals. And this is exactly what was happening in the Safavid Empire in the 18th century. Unlike in the apex days of the Safavid dynasty, when its leaders were military, political, and even religious leaders of their realm, and were trained in these matters through practice, as the rule of the dynasty solidified, crown princes began to be kept in harems. There they were surrounded by women and eunuchs, and were deliberately kept away from the real world's troubles. As a result, despite being educated, a succession of Safavid Shahs had little to no experience in ruling and handling political and military matters. But although the trouble was slowly brewing in the Safavid Empire, Shah Sultan Hussein probably did not feel it within the confines of his grand palace, in his splendidly beautiful capital of Isfahan. But thousands of kilometers away, in the dangerous northeastern border area of Khorasan, the disorganization was more readily felt. In 1698, a boy named Nadergulu was born into the family of Imamgulu, a herdsman of the Afsharid Azerbaijani-speaking Qizilbash tribe. His exact place of birth is unclear, but many sources indicate that it was Dasgerd, a village located northwest of Mashhad. As a member of the militant and nomadic Afsharid tribe, Nader is said to have been a good rider and hunter as early as the age of 10. This was a dangerous region, regularly plagued by raids from the Turkmen tribes, and young men were trained to be ready to fight at a very early age. Nader's defiant character was, to an extent, shaped by the troubles of his childhood and early adulthood. His father died when he was still very young, condemning Nader to a life of poverty. He is said to have been subject to ridicule for growing up in poverty without a father. but this experience apparently hardened his character instead of bringing him down. Moreover, this experience is said to have fostered distrust towards those in privileged positions, including nobility and mullahs. Having been brought up in poverty by his widowed mother may have been the catalyst for a relatively respectful conduct towards women during his future reign and military campaigns, particularly compared to how others treated women lacking male protection at the time. Around the age of 15, Nader entered the service of the governor of Abivard, Baba Ali Beg Kusa Amadlu, as a musketeer in his army. One of the main responsibilities of this army and Nader as its soldier was to fight against raiders and prevent them from taking loot. In 1714 to 1715, several thousand Yumut Turkmens attempted to raid northern Khorasan, but Baba Ali's troops defeated them and captured 1,400 raiders in the battle. Baba Ali chose Nader to give this news to Shah Sultan Hussein in the capital, which indicates that either Nader distinguished himself against the raiders or was already in the good graces of the governor. Shah Sultan Hussein was gracious in this meeting, giving Nader a gift of 100 tomans. But apparently, important members of the court were not as kind. There is a story that the court officials were rude to Nader, which likely exacerbated his negative opinion of those in positions of power and privilege. Still, at this point, Nader's life trajectory was pointing upwards, as on his return to Khorasan, he married the daughter of Baba Ali and saw his status gradually rise. This success won Nader both followers and enemies in Khorasan. Around this time, the Georgian prince Gyorgy, known as Gorgan Khan in the Safavid sources, was appointed governor of Kandahar to deal with the unrest caused by Afghan tribes on the border with the Mughal Empire. The sources report that the Georgian soldiers of Gorgan oppressed the Afghans, which prompted the revolt of Mir Vais. Gorgan arrested Mir Vais, sending him to the Shah to decide on his punishment. Instead of punishing the rebel, Sultan Hussein allowed Mir Vais into his inner circle. The Shah even allowed Mir Vais on a pilgrimage to Mecca, where the Afghan rebel secured a fatwa authorizing Sunni Muslims of Kandahar to end the Shia rule. In 1709, Mir Vais returned to Kandahar and killed Gorgan and his Georgians. Kandahar was now out of Safavid control, with several armies of the Shah failing to defeat Mir Vais and his Ghilzai Afghans. Then followed the Abdali Afghans, who rebelled and won power in Herat. This state of affairs on the eastern frontiers of the empire gave Nader an opportunity to rise in the hierarchy. Chaos can indeed be a ladder. In 1716, Nader's father-in-law, Baba Ali, was sent from Mashhad to fight the Abdali Afghans and was killed. Baba Ali's brother, Korban Ali, became the new governor of Abivard, but soon he also died of illness, or according to other claims, was killed by Nader. The new governor, Hassan Ali Khan, officially appointed Nader as his deputy, and very soon, Nader became the de facto ruler of Abivard. During this period, Nader participated in several campaigns aimed at defeating the Afghans, but none of them were successful. On one occasion, he was almost killed. In any case, he learnt from this experience, which would be used in his future campaigns. However, all these troubles did not prevent Shah Sultan Hussein from enjoying his life filled with wine and concubines. The Shah was happy to enjoy the privileges of being emperor, but did not like to shoulder the burden of ruling. He was content with leaving the political and military matters to court officials, nobles, and eunuchs. In 1706, Sultan Hussein set out on a pilgrimage with a huge entourage of 60,000 people to Qom and Mashhad, the holy cities for the Shia. This was an extremely financially costly endeavor for the state treasury and the provinces along the Shah's route. While he was away from Isfahan, a severe food shortage in the capital caused thousands to gather in front of the Ali Kapu Palace, the Shah's residence. The enraged public shouted insults at the Shah and threw stones at the palace, showing the level of authority and respect that Sultan Hussein had among the capital's population at the time. There were troubles on the border regions of the empire, including the Caucasus, Kandahar, Herat, and the Persian Gulf Islands. And the Shah was either unresponsive to these challenges or ineffective in overcoming them. Particularly, the failure to defeat the Afghans emboldened them. In the autumn of 1719, Mahmud Hutaki of the Ghilzai Afghans of Kandahar, the son of Mir Vais, sacked Kerman with 10,000 men, comprehensively looting the city and killing many of its inhabitants. 2 years later, Mahmud once again marched with his army to besiege Kerman. This time the city was better prepared, but suffered terribly under a lasting siege, which ended with Kerman paying 1,700 tomans to end the siege. The Afghans then moved to besiege Yazd, but the defences of the city stood tall. At this point, Mahmud had lost a significant number of men in battle and due to desertion. But given the apparent weakness of the Safavids, he decided to make a huge gamble. His army marched directly on Isfahan. Panic ensued in the Safavid capital. Instead of staying put in Isfahan and waiting out the Afghan siege until a more powerful army could be raised elsewhere to relieve the capital, the Shah decided to move the army stationed in the capital and defeat the Afghan rebels in a decisive battle. The Shah's army had more men, but it was disorganized due to rivalry, a lack of communication, and a lack of a common plan between different units and commanders, which doomed it to defeat in the Battle of Gulnabad on the outskirts of Isfahan. Afterwards, Shah Sultan Hussein could have left the capital and rallied his loyalists for further resistance against Mahmud, but instead, in October 1722, he surrendered. The Shah abdicated his throne. Although his successor, Tahmasp, continued attempts to rally the Safavid loyalists to recapture the capital, the mighty dynasty, which had reigned over Iran, the Caucasus, eastern Anatolia, parts of the Middle East, and Central Asia for more than 2 centuries, had practically fallen. The capital was in the hands of the Afghans. Meanwhile, the Ottomans had captured the Caucasus, while the Russians were trying to gain a foothold on the Caspian shore. Remember, chaos can be a ladder. In retrospect, it certainly was for Nader. As the state authority collapsed, Abivad's governor fled the city, and Nader became its de facto ruler. Taking advantage of the chaos, he solidified control over the surrounding areas, including Kalat, a former fortress of Timur, and won the loyalty of several small local warlords and chiefs. Around this time, a Safavid court official named Malik Mahmud Sistani cut a deal with the Afghans, who agreed to his control over Khorasan in exchange for the recognition of Mahmud Hotaki as the new Shah. Nader was not strong enough to oppose Malik Mahmud's authority, while Malik Mahmud did not want to risk his army in a campaign against Nader's fortified sphere of control. The consensus was reached when Nader accepted the authority of a new governor sent to Abivad by Malik Mahmud, while Nader was now in charge of administering justice, and he used, or perhaps abused, this authority to its fullest. He worked under Malik Mahmud's authority and punished warlords and chiefs who opposed him. Those who chose to accept Nader became part of his growing army. Those who opposed him until the bitter end were severely punished. According to historian Michael Axworthy, these tactics of benevolence to those that submitted, combined with harshness to prevaricators and traitors, proved successful. Nader followed the same principle throughout his career. He was quite ruthless, but not pointlessly vindictive. He would rather take even a man of dubious loyalty into his service than destroy him unnecessarily. His prestige grew, and attracted new chiefs and armed followers into his service, eager for a share in the proceeds of future successes. By 1724, Nader had amassed a formidable force with around 1,200 cavalry, and felt powerful enough to make a move against Malik Mahmud. One source tells that Nader personally killed Malik Mahmud's appointed governor of Abivad at the end of their joint hunting day with a single blow of a sword to his neck. After that, Nader made a successful raid on Mashhad. He was then called upon to help the city of Merv against raiders, and on a separate occasion, to intervene in a war between Turkmen tribes. He then defeated the Chameshgazak Kurds and captured their base, Kabushan. Nader used each of these instances as an opportunity to grow his prestige and recruit new men into his nascent army. At this point, another figure enters the power struggle in Iran. The son of the deposed emperor, Tahmasp II, had escaped Isfahan before the Afghans took the capital, and was eager to restore the throne to his dynasty. He went to the Qajar tribe, one of the most powerful in the realm, and tried to persuade its leader, Fath Ali Khan Qajar, to retake Isfahan immediately. But Qajar advised caution and suggested that Tahmasp capture Mashhad from Malik Mahmud first. Tahmasp reached out to Nader and secured his participation in this campaign. In September 1726, Shah Tahmasp II and Fath Ali Khan Qajar marched on Khorasan. There, Nader joined them with a force of 2,000 cavalry and infantry, a few cannons, and Zanbarek camel guns. Nader met Tahmasp as a Shah, knelt before him, and pledged his allegiance. As a gesture of gratitude, Tahmasp hugged Nader and gave him the title of Khan. This was the moment when Nader started his rise from a regional force into an actor capable of influencing affairs on the imperial scale. Nader immediately won a few skirmishes against Malik Mahmud's forces. Fath Ali Khan saw his influence over Tahmasp wane, and he decided to reach out to Malik Mahmud. Nader's scouts captured Qajar's letter, and he was executed for his treason. Malik Mahmud saw this moment as an opportunity to crush the weakened royal host, but was comprehensively defeated by Nader. Even though he managed to get back behind the city walls of Mashhad, there was no relief in sight for the besieged city, and very soon he surrendered to Tahmasp and Nader. But towards the end of 1726, Tahmasp II started growing jealous of Nader's authority, as the Shah's courtiers did their best to turn the young Shah against his commander-in-chief. In early 1727, he slipped out to Kabushan and sent letters throughout the empire, calling Nader a traitor and asking for military support against him. But Nader was quick to act, and after defeating Tahmasp's small force, had the Shah at his mercy. Nader chose to forgive Tahmasp and celebrate Nowruz together with the Shah in Mashhad. Although Nader was clearly on the rise, he still apparently needed someone from the Safavid dynasty for the sake of legitimacy. Nader was in no rush to capture Isfahan and lay claim to the Safavid crown yet. He decided to deal with the Afghan threat coming from the east first. In September 1727, his army laid siege to Sangan, and a month later the town was taken. Soon, Nader's army had to face a 7,000 to 8,000 strong Abdali Afghan army near Sangan. The sources report that Nader only had around 1,000 men. He placed his musketeer infantry in entrenchments, which allowed them to fire at the attacking Afghan forces, and made sure to protect them with some 500 of his best cavalry, maneuvering throughout the battlefield. Nader personally took part in this 4-day-long battle, which ended in the Afghan retreat to Herat. Nader returned to Mashhad, where the nominal Shah Tahmasp was conspiring against his commander, but to no avail. Tahmasp tried to flee Mashhad on several occasions, but each time, Nader's men would capture him and bring him back. At one point, Tahmasp even tried to kill himself with a knife, but Nader personally prevented this. At this point, Nader was using Tahmasp's seal and issuing orders in his name. After defeating several rivals in Mazandaran and Astarabad, Nader set his sights on Herat once again. The Afghans still controlled Isfahan, and Nader thought that before marching on the capital, he needed to take the whole of Khorasan under his control and defeat the Afghans in his rear. On May 4, 1729, Nader's 15,000-strong force met with Aliya Khan's Afghan Ghilzai force of approximately the same number near Kafakala, 80 kilometers west of Herat. Nader once again placed his musketeer infantry in the rear, protecting them on each flank with cannons, while he took charge of the cavalry reserve. Nader planned to draw the Afghans towards his infantry and cannons and defeat them with superior firepower. The battle started when Nader sent a small cavalry detachment against the Afghans to wear them down and bring them closer to his musketeers. This part of the plan worked, as the Afghan cavalry charged Nader's infantry's left flank furiously. Aliya Khan's forces managed to push back their left flank, creating a really threatening situation for Nader. And just like in the Battle of Sangan, Nader led a personal charge of cavalry to relieve his forces, getting wounded in the process. But he succeeded in repelling the Afghan attack. After a tough battle, both sides decided to regroup. Aliya Khan withdrew east towards the Harirud River, while, after an initial withdrawal, Nader continued his march on Herat. At this point, both camps received word that some 10,000 Afghan men, under the command of Zulfikar Khan, were en route from Farah to assist Aliya. Nader needed to act fast and defeat Aliya Khan decisively before he got reinforcements. Several more skirmishes took place between the sides, as Nader's firepower continued to prevail over the Afghan cavalry. But the decisive battle eluded Nader. At this point, the hero of our story decided to engage in a psyop, as we now call it. He sent a column against Aliya Khan's army with loud victory drums and horns, to make the Afghan army believe that Nader had already dealt with Zulfikar Khan's force. Nader left a portion of his force to engage with the approaching Zulfikar Khan's army, while the rest were sent to pursue Aliya's force. However, a violent sandstorm erupted at this point, preventing any meaningful engagement between the sides. Both Afghan armies managed to retreat into the city walls of Herat, bracing for a siege. but it did not last long. Nader's artillery was causing havoc in the city and gradually weakening its defences. Aliya Khan sued for peace. Nader accepted his submission in exchange for the recognition of Herat as a Safavid territory. Many Abdalis joined Nader. Nader's campaign against the Afghans did not end with a decisive victory, but for now he was content with the situation in the east. Now his sights turned west, towards the capital, Isfahan. By the 1730s, what used to be a small army had grown into a well-drilled force of 20 to 30,000 men. It had superior firepower compared to all other rival armies, with a decisive commander who knew when to punish his foes and when to bring them into the fold to expand his army. Nader's military prowess and political cunning enabled him to rise in status, capitalizing on the chaotic situation within the Safavid Empire. But this was only the beginning of his rise. In the next video, we will talk about how Nader became the most powerful man in the Safavid Empire and his war against the Ottomans. To ensure you don't miss that, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our patrons and YouTube members can watch more than 250 exclusive videos. Join their ranks via the link in the description or by pressing the join button under the video. To watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel and we will catch you on the next one.